I want to offer a word of welcome and thank you for joining us on Yom HaShoah, this day of Holocaust remembrance. My name is Rabbi Jordan Braunig. I'm the Jewish chaplain in the Office of Spiritual and Religious Life here at Emory. On behalf of our office, I thank you for pausing in your day for a moment of reflection, a chance to confront the horrors of genocide, and to remember those who were lost. In 30 minutes together, we will process that which we couldn't process in a lifetime. As the generation of survivors dwindles, I am so deeply impressed by students who envisioned and created this event. Within minutes of being asked, each responded, "Yes, I want to be a part of this." To be a Jew is to hold on to the stories of those who came before us, to know that those stories shape how we will live our lives today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Senior Max Rotenberg, who will set our kavanah, our intention, and will introduce President Fenves, who we are honored to have joining us today.
Thank you, Rabbi Jordan. The Holocaust is an incomprehensible event. Its sheer magnitude challenges the limits of the human mind. People have tried to understand it through the lenses of history, political science, philosophy, theology, poetry, film, and many more. But on Yom HaShoah, we are challenged to do something different, not just to understand what happened, to remember those who perished. In so doing, we personalize this catastrophic event. To that end, we will be hearing the personal stories of those who were in it and the few who survived. It is through their individual stories that we honor them and we can reclaim the humanity that was stolen from them. We will share poems that capture the human psyche in ways that escape prose, and we will light a candle to honor those who perished and to symbolically restore their humanity. As the book of Proverbs says, Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam, the soul of man is the candle of the Lord. It is my honor to begin this tekes by inviting President Fenves to say a couple words about his personal connection to the Holocaust and light a yahrzeit candle in honor of those who perished.
Well, thank you, Max. And I want to echo Rabbi Jordan's words and thank all the students at Emory for continuing the remembrance of the Shoah, the Holocaust. My experience of the Holocaust is through the eyes of my father, Stephen Fenves, a survivor of Auschwitz and Buchenwald. My dad was much younger than you are now. He was age 13 when he and his family were deported after months in the Jewish ghetto of their town in northern Serbia, Hungarian province of Serbia. And the last time he saw his mother was after they were forcibly removed from the transport trains at Auschwitz, and he never saw her again. My dad was trilingual and ended up working for the underground in Auschwitz, translating between Serbian, Hungarian, and German, and was smuggled out of Auschwitz as the Russians were approaching Auschwitz in January 1945. Ended up on a transport at a satellite labor camp in Buchenwald. And then as the Americans were approaching, forced march where nearly half those died, ended up in Buchenwald just days before the liberation, about this time in April of 1945. So I remember the Holocaust through my dad's eyes. His father, my grandfather, who I never met, but my middle name is in honor of my grandfather. My grandmother, who I never met, but my daughter's, one of my daughter's middle name is in her honor. And we remember her through her artwork, which is a manifestation of her life that we grew up with, and now has been distributed to the kids, the grandkids, and eventually the great-grandchildren. So my father's almost 90 years old. He has spoken extensively about his experience and what it's meant to him. He just sent me this past week his first written memoir. So I'm looking forward to studying it more deeply in addition to the oral history that I grew up with. But what the Holocaust means to me is what can happen when an individual and then a society and then a government hates and institutionalizes hate. And the Jews have been the victims of hate through the millennia. But the Holocaust was a singular event. And I think so we remember the 6 million Jews who perished. We also have to remember what led to that and work every day to make sure that never happens again.
Thank you so much, President Fenves, and thank you for sharing your father's story. I'm going to invite everyone who's here to take a yahrzeit candle to light it. As Max said, we learn in the book of Proverbs, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the flame of the compassionate one is the soul of human beings. Our souls reflect back divine light. Those who were gassed in the death camps and those who were starved in the ghettos, those who died in their valiant resistance and those who were marched until they could walk no farther, the old and the young, each of them had a light, a soul that was extinguished. For each of them, we light these candles. We will pause for a moment as we light these candles and behold them, and the tune of Eli, Eli plays. It's now my honor to invite first year student Micah Ross to share some poetry from the Shoah.
Never shall I forget that night, the first night in the camp, that turned my life into one long night 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw, transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even if I were condemned to live as long as God himself. Never.
Each of us has a name. Each of us has a name given by the source of life and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our transgressions and given by our longings. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name and given by the seasons and given by the blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and even given by death.
After Auschwitz, no theology. From the chimneys of the Vatican, white smoke rises, a sign the cardinals have chosen themselves a pope. From the crematory of Auschwitz, black smoke rises, a sign that the conclave of gods has not yet chosen the chosen people. After Auschwitz, no theology. The numbers on the forearms of the inmates of extermination are the telephone numbers of God, numbers that do not answer, and now are disconnected one by one. After Auschwitz, a new theology. The Jews who died in the Shoah have now come to be like their God, who has no likeness of a body and has no body. They have no likeness of a body, and they have no body. So from the figurative to the narrative, I want to shift and invite first-year student Noah Michelle to share a little bit of her family's story.
Hi, everyone. As Rabbi Jordan said, my name is Noah. My grandparents were both survivors of the Holocaust. My Zadie was in the Dachau concentration camp and my Bubby was in Stutthof. A lot of times people are often shocked that an 18-year-old girl's grandparents were survivors because the Holocaust feels like it was so long ago, but it really wasn't. My grandparents sat me down and told me the stories. One story in particular that really stuck out to me was my Bubby in the Stutthof concentration camp was telling me a little bit about how she was actually with her mother, her aunt, and her grandma, and another aunt. So it was 5 women together in the camp. And the only way that they survived was because she obtained a kitchen job. So one day she was observing everyone grabbing food and how the Nazis said, please go, you guys can all go grab more food. And she was horrified by the amount of inhumanity to a degree that her fellow inmates had when just saying, go grab more food. And she watched and she was horrified. So one of the Nazis took note of her and pulled her aside and said, I noticed you didn't grab food. You're getting a kitchen job. And this was the only way she could survive, was because she was able to smuggle food back to her family. My grandpa, on the other hand, spoke many languages and he was able to communicate with the Nazis. And he was actually a scribe for inmates when he first entered the camp. So that's also how he survived in Dachau. My grandparents' stories were told when I was young. I was familiar with them. And it's just, I think about it constantly, and I think about it every day, how my grandparents how they survived and how they did this in the depths of inhumanity in this. My grandma was younger than I was, and she was able to smuggle food and she was able to be strong. I remember I once said to my mom, how is my life as a college student and my stress, how can I compare that to my grandparents? I always think about that, how my grandparents were struggling for food, and I'm so lucky to be here, and I'm for it because they survived, and I'm so lucky to not be thinking about struggling for food and not be thinking about the in depths of inhumanity that they experienced. And I mean, I really, every single day, I think about my grandparents and how strong they were, and I want to emulate their strength and yeah.
Thank you, Noah. You're right. I mean, it is remarkable that we're not many generations away. I was on the morning minion this morning, and as people were listing the people who they were remembering on Yom HaShoah, it's my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great uncle. It's not far from our lives. And so it can be overwhelming to take all of that in. And so we create this day as something of a container for all of the sadness that we can't live our lives on a day in and day out basis, holding that sadness. And so we hold it today. I'll recite the words of El Malei Rachamim, and then invite us to I'll say the words of the Mourner's Kaddish together. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utahorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmot Kol Acheinu B'nei Yisrael, Anashim, Nashim, Yeladim V'yeladot, Shenitbechu, Shenechneku, Shenisrafu, Shenehergu, Began Eden Tehei Menuchatam, Ana Ba'al Harachamim, Hasirem Beseter Kanfecha Leolamim, Utzror Bitzror Hachayim Et Nishmotehem, Adonai Hu Nachalatam, V'yanuchu V'shalom Al Mishkavotehem V'nomar. Amen. God full of mercy, who dwell on the heights, shelter them beneath the wings of your presence. High among the holy and the pure, who shine like the brilliance of the heavens. Shelter them, shelter their souls of our sisters and brothers who were slaughtered in the Shoah. Small children, women, men, strangled, suffocated, burned to ash. They revered your name. Their souls passed into your care. Let Eden be their resting place. Master of mercy, drape them and keep them forever in your protecting presence. Bind their souls to the living and to life. God, you are their inheritance. Where they rest, ease them with peace, and let us say, Amen. We'll join together in a moment to recite the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish. We are cognizant of all the individuals, the entire families and communities who were wiped from existence, for whom there was no one to recite the memorial prayer. And we remember the 6 million Jews, as well as the 5 million others, those killed for their political views, those killed for their sexual orientation, the Roma people, the righteous Gentiles. If it is your practice, and as you are able, I'll invite you to rise as we recite the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbi. Ve'omad yivarach yirtei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayed d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbi. V'varach le'olam u'ol me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yetadar v'yetalel shmei dekudesha barichu. Ve'olam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru.
Amen.
Amen. The words of the Kaddish conclude with the words, Osei shalom b'mromav. May the one who brings peace to the cosmos, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, cause peace to descend upon us. Our hope in gathering here today is to rebuild a sense of shalom, a sense of peace, and to regain a sense of shlemut, of wholeness. We who are alive, who remember, have a holy obligation to remain vigilant, to know that our not forgetting means never allowing the forces of hatred, of xenophobia and bigotry to find a foothold in our midst. We give merit to those who have died when we live lives full of mitzvot. We honor in gathering them together for Shabbat meal. We honor them in checking in on those who are sick. We honor them in making our voices heard to protest injustice. May the peace that exists in the supernal realm make its way down to us, and may we create it in our world. And let us say, Amen. So as we conclude, I'm going to turn it to Karis Weilenman, who is going to share some words of closing.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to commemorate Yom HaShoah. Taking the time to recognize the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust reminds us to recognize history and to never allow it to happen again. We would like to extend a special thank you to President Fenves for joining us today and sharing a few words, and a special thank you to Rabbi Jordan for helping to organize this meaningful event. Additionally, thank you to Zach Cole for his technical support, and to Max, Noah, and Micah for helping to lead this ceremony. As music plays to conclude this program, please take a few minutes to reflect. Starting at 1:15, in about 15 minutes, we will be reading names for an hour on the back patio of Hillel. Hillel will also have yahrzeit candles that you can light and remembrance stones that can be placed into the garden to honor the victims of the Holocaust. Thank you again, and we hope you can join us shortly.